Hello everyone and welcome back to Ruby Lessons in Codecademy. So in the last lesson we worked on a project which was refactoring a program that they had already pre-written for us, and it was all about prime numbers. So we finished that. It was quite a quick project because we had already covered the things in detail. Today we're starting something new, so blocks, procs and lambdas. We have kind of covered blocks before, but today's lesson is going to focus on blocks once again in slightly more detail. So blocks are kind of like anonymous methods or undefined methods. You will see what I mean. Let's just read what it's going to be saying over here. So we learned a bit about blocks in loops and iterators. So that was one of the previous lessons. You can see the link in the bottom left corner. And methods, blocks and sortings. So we have used it before. We are slightly familiar with it. Let's just get more familiar. We said earlier that a block is like a nameless method, as I was saying, or an anonymous method, similar thing. I do believe that in maybe C# or PHP, I'm not too sure, don't quote me on that, they are called anonymous methods or functions. But that's not quite true. We'll get to actual nameless methods called lambdas, so that's the more correct one. Later in this lesson, we have covered lambdas in Python lessons. We haven't done it in Ruby at all so far, but lambdas are quite interesting in Python because I'm not 100% sure of how they work. I just know that they're like a function that you've put into your program without predefining it, of course. So a Ruby block is just a bit of code that can be executed. Block syntax uses either do end or curly braces, like so. We have also covered that before. They're used interchangeably. I myself prefer using the curly braces. So you can do curly braces as shown here, or do end as shown here. Blocks can be combined with methods like .each and .times to execute an instruction for each element in a collection, like a hash or an array. So as you can see here and here, actually the same thing. So instructions, let's do a little review. Use .times and a block to put the string I'm a block 5 times. Oh, that's quite easy. 5.times puts I'm a block, I believe. Yep. I'm a block, exclamation mark. Good. Ignore the 5. And we have I'm a block 5 times puts out to our console. Moving on. Collect them all. Oh no. Good, there's a bunch of really useful Ruby methods that can take blocks. One we haven't covered yet is collect. So the collect method takes a block and applies that expression in the block to every element in an array. So you take an array and you do collect to each of the elements in turn. Check it out. So what this would do, .collect num to the power of 2. So 1 to the power of 2 is 1, then 2 is 4, 3 is 9, and that is what we get. Well, that's what it's going to return. It's going to change the array straight away without notifying us, unless you put it out, of course. On this line, if you were to do puts my nums, then you would get this. But other than that, you would get no output of, or no, you would have no way of knowing whether this is done. If we look at the value of my nums, though, we'll see it hasn't changed. So my nums, we have that. Oh, okay. That's quite interesting. That contradicts what I said, so just ignore what I said. So my num stays the same, but this does something else. So that just does everything to my nums. This is because .collect returns a copy of my nums, but doesn't actually change or mutate the original my nums array. If we want to do that, we can use .collect with an exclamation mark or point, and you get what you wanted, what I was explaining beforehand. You would get. So both my nums and the copy would give you the same thing if you use the exclamation mark, because the exclamation mark means do this to whatever it's called with. So yeah, as it says here. Okay, so instructions, we've created an array fibs and placed the first 10 Fibonacci numbers in it. Fibonacci numbers are quite interesting. You can look them up if you want to. There's a link. You can probably just Google Fibonacci numbers. They're quite a popular thing in mathematics. Create a new variable, double fibs, and set it equal to the result of calling fibs.collect. Double fibs, okay. And that is not supposed to be a plus. It's supposed to be something else. And set it equal to the result of calling fibs.collect. Equals fibs.collect. And that is not how you spell collect either. Then have the block with num and num times 2. Good. The block you pass .collect should double each Fibonacci number, similar to the example above. So in the example above, we're putting it to the power of 2. Now we just need to multiply it by 2. And if I were to put our doubled fibs, we should see the result that we are expecting to get, which is this, but actually printed out. Good, there we go. So 2, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2, 3, 6, 10, 16, and so on and so forth. So let's move on. Learning to yield. So why do some methods accept a block and others do not? So it's because methods that accept blocks have a way of transferring control from the calling of the method to the block and back again. So it's like a communication between the two. We can build this into the methods we define by using the yield keyword. So now we're thinking onto making our own methods instead of using predefined methods to use blocks. So in our own method so far we haven't been able to use blocks to give them variables or to do different things. But now using the yield keyword, if you will, we can do that. So check out the code in the editor. We've set up a series of put statements so you can see when we're in the block test method and when we're in the block pass to it. Click Save and Submit Code to see the result. Okay, so let's actually read through this and see what it's doing. So we're defining a method called block test, and here it's called. So we're in the block. Okay. Well, in a way, using a block we're passing. And we're in the method, so it does we're in the method first. So we have called the method. It does we're in the method, then it does yielding to the block, and then once we call yield, it gets the input from the block. Only then. In previous functions we used things like this, n, and here we would use 10, for example. But now we are saying that the input is only read in from here, and that's the only point where you can get the block input from. The good thing with this is also that you don't even have to give the block anything, because there is a way to get out of the function or the method without actually passing the input, without passing the yield. Whereas if you were going to have something like this, you have to pass in a variable, otherwise the method will give you an error and the program will crash. So moving on, let's actually use it. Yielding with parameters. You can also pass parameters to yield. Check out the example in the editor. So what kind of okay, that's what it means by parameters. Fair enough. The yield name method is defined with one parameter, name. So that's the original parameter that we're giving it, name. On line 8, that's fine. Line 8, what? There is nothing on line 8. We call the yield name method and supply the argument Eric, so it means line 9, I'm guessing. And supply the argument Eric, okay, that's fine, for the name parameter. Since yield name has a yield statement, okay, yes, it does over here, we will also need to supply a block. And this is the block. Inside the so let's actually see what's in the block. We have n, so whatever our parameter is, puts my name is n. So when we do this with Kim, it should put my name is Kim. And then when we do it the second time, it should do it with name, which in this case is going to be Eric. So it's going to say my name is Eric, and then it should say block complete back in the method. Let's just confirm. We will also need to supply block inside the method on line 2. Okay, we first put an introductory statement. So just to make sure that we are in the method. Then we yield to the block and pass in Kim. So why we do introductory lines is just basically for debugging and checking, just to make sure that what we think it is actually what we think is happening is actually happening. So in the block, n is now equal to Kim, and we put out my name is Kim. Good. Back in the method, so we've called the block with that, and that is done. Back in the block, this time we pass, back in the method we put out that we are in between the yields, so this line. Then we yield to the block again. This time we pass Eric, which we stored in the name parameter, as I mentioned before. So when we pass that, we again call the block, and the block does this, puts my name is n, where it gets n from here, and that is gotten from the parameter, which is also gotten from Eric. It's quite a long chain. You have to backtrack quite a bit, but it makes sense when you get there. So in the block, n is now equal to Eric, and we put out my name is Eric. Finally, we put out a closing statement. Again, for debugging purposes, to make sure that we are where we think we are. So call yield name with your name as a parameter. Make sure to pass in a block that puts. Make sure to pass in a block that puts my name is your name here. Okay. So. Oh, okay. So a new function call. So we can just copy this, change this, and also my name is, there we go. Good. So this, let's see where it ended. This is where the previous one ended, and this is where our one from this call is starting and ending. So just to separate them, I am going to do a puts new line. Oops, that's not how you do a puts new line. There we go. So this is just a special character which leaves a space in between the two blocks. So that's the first block from Eric, and this is the second block, which we have just called over here. Or the second line, if you will, whatever you want to call it. So let's move on. Try it yourself. See, even though this block business has a little more going on under the hood than we thought, it's still pretty straightforward. Now that we know how methods accept blocks using the yield keyword, let's define our own method and pass it a block. So, at the top of my mind, I wouldn't be able to think of a method, so hopefully they do actually give us something. So define your own method, double. Okay, so they are actually going to give us something to work with. That accepts a single parameter. I'm going to call that number, I'm guessing, because it's double or just num, even easier. And yields to a block. Yield, okay. Then call it with a block that multiplies the number parameter by 2. You can double any number you like. Okay, so, and then I just need to do end. So double, or 5, yeah, double, and then I'm going to call it with, that shouldn't be block. I don't know why I'm using block there. There should be just normal parentheses. So let's do double 5. And it's going to return the yield because that's what I've told it to, because there is nothing after that. Even though it actually isn't really going to return it, because I'm going to put it out over here. And then I need to call n. Yield also num. I believe that does go into parentheses. And puts n times 2. So let's see whether that works. Good. So we just doubled a number that we were wanting to double. 5 times 2 is 10. If I put in 7, it also works. So what we're doing here is passing this into the method double. Then the method double puts it, gives it to the yield. Then the yield calls the block. Then the block receives it and puts whatever n is, so num times 2. Then that ends, that line ends, and it goes onto the next line over here, if there was a next line, but because the next line in this case is end, the the method ends. So if you have any questions, do feel free to ask in the comments down below. I know it's kind of a difficult thing to understand, maybe, because there are lots of backs and forths. So you go from here to here, then to here, then back, and so on. But if you have any questions, do feel free to ask in the comments down below. Rewatch this video, I would recommend it. And yeah, if you enjoyed watching this video, then please do give me a thumbs up, share and subscribe. It encourages me to make more videos. If you didn't, do feel free to give me a dislike and tell me in the comments down below why you disliked it. But other than that, thanks so much for watching and goodbye.